tells a story in one small part about distraction. Distraction is one of those things that gets in our way many, many times in our lives. It gets in our way of doing the things that we want to do at home, at work, in our relationships. Distraction causes us to stumble in many different ways. It is no different in the life of the church. And in fact, Jesus, as he's talking to Mary and Martha, are having a bit of a church moment there in their house, if you will. And it would appear that the distractions that Martha was concerned about, which were probably all very important things, they probably needed to get done. They probably needed to be paid attention to. They had their place within the life and the workings of the house there. But unfortunately, they were distractions to what Jesus was trying to accomplish in that moment. And Mary realized what was really to be going on in that moment. And Jesus praised her for doing the right thing. This happens in the life of church too, here, maybe even at Aldersgate, but certainly if I want to use the word church to describe all church, not making any denominational lines or anything like that. I want to share with you an example of how this occurred over in England, actually. There is a popular praise song composer named Matt Redman. Anybody heard of Matt Redman? A couple people have heard of Matt Redman. Okay. No, you would not be terribly familiar with his music in traditional worship. The music hasn't made it so much into traditional worship yet, but like other songs like Majesty and other songs that were written as contemporary pieces back then, probably will come into the life of the church. If you take a look at the little black book, The Faith We Sing, I know that sometimes some of you may cringe when we use that book, but you know what? It is a part of our worship experience. And some of those songs that are in there came out of the contemporary experience, and now they're making their way into the traditional experience. Okay, Matt Redman is a member of a church called Soul Survivor in Watford, England. Okay? And he wrote a bunch of songs, and in fact, there's a song that goes with the scripture passage, the Psalter reading that Bill and Candy shared with us today. It's called Better Is One Day, and it's a wonderful song. We shared it in the contemporary experience, but didn't really have a way to bring it in here just yet, so maybe someday. Matt Redman also wrote another song, and it's made its way around planet Earth, and it's called The Heart of Worship. How many of you are familiar with the song The Heart of Worship? Okay, just a couple hands. Beautiful, beautiful song. It dates back to the late 1990s. It's born from a period of apathy within Matt's home church, Matt Redman's home church, Soul Survivor in England. Despite the country's overall contribution to the current worship revival, Matt Redman's congregation, and he is not the pastor but the praise leader there, was struggling to find meaning in its musical outpouring at that particular time. I'm going to guess that if the music was struggling, I'm going to guess that many areas were also struggling. Music for us human beings is a big part of what worship is all about. It doesn't have to be, but it oftentimes is. Matt writes this: "There was a dynamic missing, so the pastor did a pretty brave thing. He decided to get rid of the sound system and the band for a season. And we gathered together with just our voices. His point was that we had lost our way in worship, and the way to get back to the heart would be to strip everything away." Reminding his church family to be producers in worship, not just consumers, the pastor, Mike Pivalaki, asked an important question. When you come through the doors on Sunday, what are you bringing as your offering to God? Let me repeat that. When you come through the doors on a Sunday, what are you bringing as your offering to God? Matt Redman said, the question initially led to some embarrassing silence. So I'm going to put the story of Matt Redman on hold for just a minute and remind us where we are. We're in the midst of a series, 2 books written by Bishop Robert Schnase about being fruitful congregations and having fruitful lives. These 2 books take us through a 5-step passage of the 5 elements that Bishop Schnase considers to be the most important things in order to be a fruitful living person and to be a fruitful congregation. And so last week you heard Pastor Don talk about the 5 phases of the worship workout. I think he did an excellent job of introducing us to the personal level of passionate worship. And so what I want to try to accomplish today is to share what Bishop Schnase thinks are the important elements of passionate worship from a congregational standpoint. And as I've read this chapter through a bunch of times, I realize there are some major things that need to be understood. And so I want to try and lay those out for us. In order for us as a congregation to experience passionate worship, there are some things that have to happen. And the most important thing, and it keeps going throughout this chapter in the book, is this. I'm just going to sort of put a link, okay? This is like a chain link, right? Passionate worship connects people to God and connects people to each other. In the scripture lesson from Luke, we heard Jesus speaking with a Pharisee. The Pharisee said, what's the most important commandment? The answer comes back, love the Lord your God with all your mind, your heart, your soul, your strength, okay? But there's another part to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. In order for us to be a passionately worshiping congregation, we have to find a way to be connected to God and connected to one another. For if the greatest commandment is to love the Lord